getting closer every week to being on time here. Okay. Let's see. Now we're going to try to find out how we can add Michael. So I have a few things to tell you about today. Really, I want to hear what Michael's got going on. But one of them is the mysterious case of the straw itch mites. You can read my blog in a few weeks about it because I had to compile some information here. And let's see, can I get rid of this? I don't really want to learn more about the chat. Okay, come on. How do we get rid of this? No. Here's Michael. Yay. Let's see here. Can we add Michael? Come on. Are we adding him? Yay. Oh my God. Okay.
Good morning.
How are you this morning? Hi, Corey. Good morning. Oh.
Good.
Good?
Good.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I was hoping that you could be the one to talk this morning. I do have some things to visit about. What's on your mind, though? Dude, straw itch mites has been my uh like unwilling focus for the last 2 weeks. Uh, but and it does have to do with horses in the sense that um it was in the hay. They were in the
I don't even know what straw itch mites are. Never heard of
nobody
them.
nobody has. Nobody has. I had to do all the research myself. Kip bought me a microscope. I had to find the one guy in the country that has written an article about it. Our local ag department had no idea. Our local extension office had no idea. Even though Adam, the straw itch, look it up, you guys, you'll find his article. The straw itch mite guy said they're actually more common than people think. That their bites get blamed on other, other creatures, but a little bit I have trouble believing that because it was a drama. Not to my horses, not to my dogs, not to my cats, and for the most part, not to Kip until he handled the hay. I'm hand feeding hay twice a day, not with a tractor. All of a sudden, I was getting bitten all over. Okay.
Oh,
Hi, Julie. Good morning. So, long story short, because I wrote you guys can read about it later. What the hell? It was horrible. And the bites, like I won't show you guys the bites, but they're lasting like the residual is lasting forever. The mite, Michael, is so microscopic that to get an actual picture to, 100% like see the body and like the segments of the body, you have to have an electron microscope.
oh my gosh.
So my like, you know what I mean, to get an actual picture, which I was suspicious about because you can't just like go to Google and get a good picture, you know.
Hmm.
So I found them under the 1000 power zoom, microscope, and you definitely can see them, and they definitely fit the description. But that's how tiny they are.
Hmm.
Which guess what that means? They waltz right through your clothes. They blow on the wind. And the thing,
How do you get rid of them?
well, so cute because Adam's from South Dakota. He's like, well, you can just wait a couple weeks for the first hard freeze. No. uh, and basically, we got rid of all the hay that was infested, and because they are parasitic, so they are actually eating the pests that are in the hay. Like so, usually some sort of caterpillar or beetle or larva. They show up in stored grain that has some sort of you know bug in it, like a typical. And then so the same thing. This was in a Kentucky bluegrass straw. And so basically, what he said was to clear it all out because they don't have anything to eat once you have that. But they can last like 3 weeks without eating. Most likely, it's going to be a day or two. But the reason they're biting me is because they're trying to see if I'm food. I'm not food. But my
Oh, who knows? You might be.
No, don't even say that. Because you know what? The thing is, before you have any idea of, you start to question everything. Is it in my house? Is it in the round pen? Is it on my horses? Do I have some mole that I've had since I was born that suddenly is hatching? Like, you know what I mean? You go through all these things, like, and trying to figure out, like, what's changed. Where did I go? Is it chiggers? Is it scabies? Is it bed bugs? Is it fleas? Is it, you just go, is it a fungus? Is it a nettle that's, that you're like, around and around and around? Um, but then, of course, as you start eliminating things, and it was really helpful when Kip finally got bit, which was only when he handled the hay and only when he handled that kind of hay. But at least that was like, okay, it's not at Debbie's, it's not in the round pen, it's not on the horses. It's because I'm thinking, well, maybe the horses are in the forest and I snuggle with them. Who know? You don't know. So all this entomology that I learned. So the straw itch mite is an arachnid. I didn't know that. What are the difference between, like, they can't, they're, oh, ticks, you could think, is it a tick? But it was so much smaller than a tick. But the thing is that it's amazing. They are so tiny. And yet they are leaving like eraser, pencil eraser sized welts that are taking 3 weeks to get rid of. And here's the other super fun thing about trying to figure it out. The bite is painless. Maybe some people sort of have an awareness, right? The bite is painless. It shows up 10 to 20 hours later. So trying to figure out, like, trying to remember what you did the day before was like, did I touch that? What did I, you know what I mean? Holy geez. So you get rid of the hay basically, and Kip suited up to help me get rid of the last couple bales, because we have hay storage, small amount of hay storage in our barn, and we had like four different kinds of hay in there. And so, I'm rolling around in there with my little lint roller. Finally, I figured out that, like, that could slow down the bugs. Before that, I was just grabbing, different tufts of, and shaking it on the paper and looking through my microscope. Um, anyway, so we figured out where I'm telling you. So we had to get it all out and quarantine the rest of the hay. There's like $200 worth of hay that most likely isn't going to be infested in a few weeks because there's really nothing in it for it to eat. You know, Quarantine that on the other side of the property, clear out and when you rake it, they fly, because they're so light. And it was windy, and Kip had like everything on basically up to here. They just went you would have to be wearing Tyvek, like a
Yeah.
some sort of like hazmat. Now, it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? It's annoying. And one day I had them all down my back, probably 50 or 60 bites. It was insane. Um, that was kind of a son of a bitch because, of course, my histamine reaction. But I'm not overly reactive to bug bites anyway. That's why I was a little bit surprised when I got those couple at your place. I was like, that lasted, for a while. Anyway, you just move that out. And then what we did is we treated the area with diatomaceous earth, but you can also just essentially let it sit for a few weeks. And if there's nothing to eat, presuming that whatever was in the hay is not now breeding and, continuing on in your hay room, but the are,
Mhm.
low. But then you're thinking, okay, well, does it eat spiders? Does it eat rodent droppings? Is it eating my cat food? Like, you know what I mean? You don't, is it eating wasps? I mean, we have a bazillion wasps. What about the larva for that? What about the fly predators that I put out? See, trying to figure all that out. But anyway, Adam just two things Adam did for me. First of all, he looked at the video and the pictures that I took. I mean, you can clearly see them. They're just not so clear that you could be like, it's, but you can see their legs.
How'd you get a pictures and video?
From my microscope, because the
So the
microscope,
microscope takes digital photos?
well, it's beaming the picture to my iPad via Wi-Fi. And
See,
I would,
I'm still picturing the microscope of my childhood,
yeah,
which had no digital component whatsoever.
yeah, that would have been, it was already like super hard to figure out because um as they're moving around, you're only seeing like a tiny bit under the microscope, right? And it's really hard to like zoom in on what where they are. But let's see if I can. Well, anyway, I mean, it's a million times zoom. And if I were to, like, you can see that is a tiny straw piece of hay. Okay. And
Well,
this little guy right here is the mite. Okay. So if I roll the video, which is very important, whoops, you can see it moving. Can you see that?
oh yeah.
So if it doesn't move, you're screwed, right? Because it's but think about how much that is magnified. A tiny piece of thin hay. Um, anyway, what Adam did when he watched the video and saw the still pictures, which you're really toast if you're only looking at the still picture because it could be so grainy. A few things that he did. He confirmed, and since he's the one that studied them, all I was like, I know that someone who has studied these is going to look at this video and be like, oh no, 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 that's a caterpillar, that's a some sort of larva, that's totally different, versus he was like, that definitely could be it. And then once I told him the delay of the bites, that kind of, hey, like what I was finding in the rest of the, you know he's like, yeah, I mean, but I needed someone other than like the ag department. I'm sure they are busy, but they're like, get me a sample so I can put it under the microscope. And I'm like, I have a freaking microscope. Firstly, secondly, Adam was like, you would need an electron microscope, which by the way, OSU does have. But then he said, getting it just right so that you can see, it's not that easy. So it's not like our regular department would be. Anyway, so hopefully the diatomaceous earth, quarantining all the hay. I have a few more days, honestly, before I can be 1,000% sure because I'm only feeding hay that I just brought on the property 2 days ago. Yesterday was the first day that I fed hay without being covered in a bug spray and without at all like handling the other hay. In because I mean it's on the ground, you can't sweep it, you can't like you know what I mean? If you rake the aisleway, for instance, poof, they're just gonna like the biggest thing that wasn't fun was not knowing where I was coming from.
And
Because then
you figured this all out in a week? Or how long has this been? I mean,
it
you
really,
move quick if you figured that out in a week.
yeah, took me a week to figure it out. But to confirm where and what is, in other words, to confirm the hay. But that hay, that specific hay, was the only hay that you could find anything moving around in, other than like just a random, tiny. You know what I mean? It was not repeatable. It was because I have video on here too, where you can find 5 or 6 moving around. So but when you look under in other hay, there's nothing. There's just nothing. It's
So
pretty wild.
have you gotten hay from this source before?
I
Or like
had, I had, I had, um, I had, yeah. Uh-huh. So I buy hay from a really great place that has multiple different types. And I had actually purchased this type of hay previously, but obviously it was in a few bales. And you could also tell that it was not through all the bales. Adam said there have been cases where they are in an entire field, and rather than try to get rid of them, they just burn the whole field. And really, that's the best thing to do is burn what you have. But that's not an option for us here this time of year. Um, it's just not even close to an option. So when we took the hay, for instance, we cleaned the hay out of the hay barn, or out of the hay storage room, and put it out on the hill in front of the arena because that's hard pan. I don't want that, and the horses ate it. I knew the horses would eat it. Um, and it doesn't have any deleterious effects on them. Apparently, Adam said that some horses, might be annoyed by having it around their muzzle, and rarely, they could have a welt or two. But I mean, we have so many bugs here. It's for that are biting them right now, it would be impossible. But they definitely ate the hay. And then I just figured that, well, that's the place where they're going to have the least capability of finding a new host. Like there's nothing out there either. Then you think, okay, well, are they setting up shop in the horse manure? Would they set up shop in the forest? A single one of those tiny mites lays 300 eggs a day.
Holy shit.
So, I mean, a little bit stressful. Are they in my car? Are
Mm.
they, hooking, like, apparently they can't cling. They have enough, I guess, clingability that, they're going to stay on you briefly, right? Or be able to walk up you. Little tiny bites, bite, 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 little bites here, bites on my torso, bites in the crook. Like, it was so miserable. But you know what I did is I used the AI. So I used GROK, which was super handy because no one who is not acutely dealing with it gives a, I mean, oh, what a bummer, right? But no one wants to hear you going around and around. But what about this? But what about this? Well, here's the new data point. Da 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 da. But the computer will answer you as many times as you want to go round and round. You know, and that really helped because, and of course, I had it at my disposal all the time. So that helped me zero
So
in on
what
it.
what were you asking, Grok? Like what were the you were just
So you just start with, hey, I'm getting some bites on my body, bites or things that seem like bites. Can you help me figure out if it's a plant or an animal or a fungus? And then it starts asking questions. And then you start giving it answers.
so did it land you at Adam or how'd you find Adam? Like how far did Grok get you?
Yeah, it got me to Google. Basically, one of the first things, because I'd never heard of a straw itch mite. So I wanted pictures of it. And Grok's not going to give you pictures yet. And so, you just go to Google Images and you try to find pictures of the straw itch mite, of which there are some, but they're so, like, they're just so zoomed in, that it almost looks like CG, you know.
Mhm.
And then from the Google Images, you end up on the, so everyone that I've talked to about it, because there are people that have had horses or cut hay for 60 years and have never heard of it. So guess what they all did? Click, 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 come up with the same article that I came up with. It's like, okay. But when Adam called me back, I was like, dude, you are my hero. Thank you so much for taking the time to call me back. I didn't know if he would, but I read the article. It was like, and he's from the university, you know, hello, can you call me back? So
Wow.
anyway, that's where Grok got me. But of course, until Kip got bit, I was just going around and around and around as to what else could it be. And realistically, there's just not that many. That's another thing I learned is there's not that many bugs. I guess I assumed that there would be like 1,000. there's really not 1,000. And there's
You mean
certainly
that could be in hay or just bugs that bite you generally?
I guess I didn't, ask it how many bugs would bite it, over the whole world, including the rainforest or whatever.
Yeah.
Just in general, I guess I thought that when I looked under the microscope, I
Mm.
would see like a ton of different things that were there's freaking nothing alive in there. Every like I think in all the hay, I've seen two other into creatures and they're way too big to be the straw edge mites. And they're not in there, it's like who knows what fell from the forest or whatever, but I really thought there would be like a ton of little spiders or aphids or I mean, I don't know. You start looking around and thinking, and there's certainly not that much that's microscopic. So all the ones that we basically know, how many house spiders are there? I don't know, 4 or 5 different house spiders. Of course, we know to look out for black widows and um, brown recluse, and there's 2 or 3 types of wasps, and a few different types of ants, and we have some butterflies and some caterpillars and some moths and some beetles.
And some flies.
Yeah, in 3 different types of or 4 different types of flies, and but there's not like this whole other giant list, which is what I kind of thought. We don't have a lot of ticks. I couldn't even find a single tick. Um, so that was how I did it. You start going through the process of elimination. I know it's pretty crazy. And but you know what? It's interesting. I did think about this in regards to horsemanship, the scientific process, both for us as a horseman and for the horse as the horse, right?
Mhm. Process of elimination, identifying patterns.
Collecting data,
Mhm.
being a hypothesis, right? Testing it, coming to a conclusion, repeat. Mhm. Yeah. Let's say good morning. Eva, good morning. You're farmers. I don't know who that is. Sarah, good morning. Lou, are you yawning at us or just the fact that it's this morning? Shawnees, good morning. Lisa, good morning. Um, anyway, what are what are your thoughts on that? Just call me science girl. That's what I'm
Yeah, well,
like.
I was just gonna say, you're becoming an official scientist, branching out into entomology and arachnidology. What do you? Is
And
there a?
if is it right that the arachnid is not an insect?
Isn't it a yeah, a spider?
Uh-huh. And but the difference between a spider and arachnid. So you have a spider has spinnerets. Even the ones that don't spin webs are have the spinnerets but don't use them. So in terms of the arachnid, you have the tick, you have various different mites. Like there's one that's in the oak galls that eats the caterpillars that make the oak galls, and they do bite too. So if you, for instance, have a picnic table that's sitting out, I heard this story from somebody, under an oak forest, and you bring it in the house for some, or sit down at it for some reason, an event was the story that I heard, and those mites, so it just bit a certain person. So the mites bite, but they don't stick. So basically, you have the ones that breed on you, the ones that eat from you, or you know
Try
another,
to.
yeah, another animal, and then you have the ones that parasitize. Am I saying that right? I think I am. Um, Parasitize the another pest, and so spinnerets, blood sucking, um, and I can't remember what a mite is technically called, but so ticks, mites, and then the ones with the spinnerets. And then it was interesting because I learned that some in or arachnids that are called spiders are not actually spiders because they don't have spinnerets. So something like the bird spider, it's like freaking this big, but it's not an actual spider.
Arachnomanship.
Ah, yeah. Eva. Oh my gosh, it was so unfun. I can't even tell you. It's gonna be a good story once we for sure figure it out. Couple more days, and I'm gonna know for sure. But the dread and the disappointment of thinking you figured it out and then waking up the next day and having the bites and oh. But seriously, Michael, the scientific process, and I've been uh developing Revlon, getting her going, my giant BLM yearling, and watching her collect data, of course, because she's very clean. She doesn't know anything. So just watching her collect data and starting to draw conclusions. And so, me as the teacher of her in this, moment, um, not wanting to knock the scientific process out because she's naturally going to be that way. Talking about
Hmm.
the horse, you guys, right? Like the horse naturally being a data collector, test the hypothesis, decide whether it's reinforcing or not reinforcing, even trying to decide whether that's the right conclusion. So, like showing her that she needs to go out and around and yield the hindquarters. Well, there are a couple times when, I kind of send her out, she yields her nose, and then right away the hindquarters, not going forward and around, because of course that was the last thing she got reinforced for in the little process. So her like even understanding there's a chain, but
Hmm.
watching her draw a conclusion and test it, I was really thinking about this last night because you know how famously Pat said that Tom said, don't knock the curiosity out of a young horse. And I'm thinking, this is on the similar wavelength. Although, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that's the same thing? I guess I would just say the way that I was thinking about it is specifically that process, the scientific process, not just, oh, hey, it's a butterfly. Is it good or bad?
Yeah. Don't take the think out of a horse is another phrase that you hear,
Hmm.
to where they're like, well, whatever. I'm just going to be handled around, manhandled, or just not even manhandled, but I don't have to think. They're just going to pull on me. I think who I was helping a while ago, and that's kind of was the tone of it. You can just do it for them, and they'll wait till you tell them what to do, but it's not going to have the willing light quality that you say you're after.
And I guess, having something out of the wild or whatever, and more untouched, she doesn't know to do that. She
Hmm.
does not know to wait for me to micromanage her.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about that as I'm thinking about, okay, the curriculum that I need her to know at all at guidepost one, like, I'm like, okay, these are all the things that I need you to know. Thinking about the backwards and forward off of the halter knot or off the halter from like, this is hackamore stuff 101, right? That the feel on the skull like gets to the feet. So we have like, okay, these are the intellectual items that she needs to know. This is, I want her to practice, so we have the qualities, blah blah blah. Like, and we can certainly talk about all that, but the actual mechanism by which she interacts and learns things, I guess, I mean, I have thought about that, but getting my microscope out, collecting all this data, sorting through it, and the misery of not having enough feedback, right? Because of course the delay and like, it's just like versus once you start
Sitting with the questions and wondering, being uncertain.
Mhm. And so yeah, the curiosity of like, but also, what am I trying to say? There's a certain workmanlike manner that we want to teach our horses too. I do. I know you do in the beginning. Like, you got to stay on task, get on task, stay on task.
Mhm.
So it's not just like, la, 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 what am I curious about? But they have no other way to figure out what we're saying.
Mhm. And I mean, you've said collecting data for a long time, and that really is a great way to say it. That possibly sounds too scientific for some because that doesn't sound like feel, but what are they gathering out of the feel or not feel that you're offering them is data. I mean, it's observe, remember, compare. That is taking in data, analyzing it, comparing it,
And then
and
coming to a conclusion, though, and
hmm
coming to a conclusion that you can then test. And so the observe, remember, compare is, when
I'm
I say,
even thinking of the horse: observe, remember, compare.
of course, yeah, of course. You know who said the scientific process has really brought that to the surface is Betty, Peggy's sister, Betty. Um, she's a nurse and kind of a high-powered nurse, right? But and very smart. Um, but I think at one point she was riding Katniss and not getting maybe the result that she was thinking, or worried about the fact that she wasn't getting. She would have to correct me on this deal, but I remember it was something where I was kind of comforting her, sort of, in the sense that I'm like, don't worry. You just have to collect some data, and then it's no problem to adjust to get what you want. Decide what you want, find out where you're getting, adjust what you're doing till you get what you want. But really, there's that section of like, we don't have to be, oh, so upset that we're not getting the result that we want, except for if it's dangerous, I guess, and but we can just be like, oh, okay, well, I need enough data so that I can start to try some things. So she's the one who put my comments about data collection into just a simple phrase that was like so obvious to her. Like,
hmm
and I don't know, what do you guys think in term is that too um what am I saying? Is that too practical, too scientific, too cut and dried? Like, do we feel like that eliminates the emotion and the feel out of it? I don't know. I don't I guess from my view, it's like, well, how else are they going to figure stuff out? How else are we going to be able to talk to them? And maybe it's that, they could hook on to us, but I mean, I don't know. This is where you and I have talked about a million times that, like, there are intellectual items that we need the horse to understand.
hmm
And that's what I was thinking about with Revlon yesterday is one of the intellectual items that I want her to understand is there is a reliable process for her to figure out what I'm saying.
I think talking about it
Chelsea, come on.
as a scientific component or data collection. I think if you lose the discussion or the language around feel, then it can sound very dry and wooden. But what they are trying to connect the dots on, and we are trying to offer to them consistently so they can figure it out, still has to have feel. I mean, otherwise they're collecting data on something that doesn't have feel, and you're not going to hit your target. But that doesn't it doesn't get away from the fact that it is observe, compare, contrast, put pieces together, try things, and see what patterns emerge. Yeah, the other analogy is your menu, which I think is very good. I wonder, I bet you could come up with another one better or equally effective items on the menu, and what works. We've talked about water, path of least resistance. Like over here, I'm running into a little pool that has nowhere to go, and over here there's a stick blocking the way, and okay, so flow right through here.
Yeah, we're 6 weeks away from streamology around here. Uh, um, yeah. So with the 1 second, you guys, because these girls have a couple of good comments. The way that you present the data has feel, right? It could be like, and they're supposed to be like, oh my god. Of course, the way that you present the data has feel and a calmness and a consistency in the dream scenario, right? We should hopefully we know what the hell we're doing. And then the feedback at the end, like the understanding that yes, that was what the person was saying. That's when it's like you're hitting upon a feeling that the horse just loves,
Mhm,
appreciation and harmony and total relaxation in a lot of ways, so that's the feedback on the other side of it. Shall we read these, girls?
mhm.
So Sarah says there's such a thing as emotional intelligence, so that can have both parts in it. Sarah, I read that book, well, I listened to that book, Emotional Intelligence, or the one, that came out, oh my gosh, in the early 2000s or late 90s. I remember I was driving down to Ashland to ride with Hans, had Louis in the trailer. I was so scared because I was, just really not very confident about driving the trailer. And I was listening to that book. So it's kind of burned into my brain in some ways. But I don't remember. Can you elaborate on that? Because I don't, do you know what she's saying? Emotional intelligence has both parts?
Well, you can have the scientific component and the feel component. I mean, I think is the
Oh, that's just the two words put together. Like you can
yeah.
be emotional and intelligent. I see.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know. Elaborate, Sarah. I like Corey's comment. I was actually thinking of that. If you are
Can you read it?
sure. To me, thinking of it scientifically takes out some emotion, which for me is good. But the feel comes in when we're trying things and seeing if things work. And I think if you're thinking of it as I got to get the horse to do this, or this is what I want the horse to do, so how do I get that to happen? It's not a it's not a journey of discovery. I mean that get how do I get it to happen can be a journey of discovery for you, but getting it to happen has that how do I get it to happen, that emotion element of I'm not getting it to happen or can, right? If you're just thinking of it on a, a mechanical in a mechanical way rather than thinking, okay, the horse has to discover this, learn this, I have to present it. Like seeing the whole thing as a puzzle of how do I help the horse come upon this idea, let it be the horse's idea. I mean, we can pull in all these kind of classic horsemanship phrases, um, so that if you can think of it that way, then the emotion can shed away. But when it simply the target is how do I get the horse to do X, Y, or Z, and it comes from a spot of fixation on the goal, then that's where the emotion comes in.
Okay, so that's interesting because that's not what I was thinking about when the emotional part. Um, and Sarah just says, "Yes, Michael, that's what I was thinking." Emma was wondering if you could have the emotional side of things alongside the scientific side of things. Yeah. So let me just elaborate a little bit on what I was thinking because it's a tiny bit. What I guess what I meant is the
Well, we have two elements of emotion: the emotion in a good sense, like Sarah's referring to, but then the emotion in I get wrapped up in the emotion of it, which is what Corey's saying, taking some of the emotion out, which is good, is kind of getting wrapped up in the emotion of why am I not getting this? If it's just okay, collect data, present, like I've got to keep trying here, and then the horse is going, okay, I'm continuing to try while you're continuing to try. So,
yeah, I guess our emotional fitness as learners,
mhm.
and all the different levels that we go through. I think, and maybe this isn't different than what we're talking about, Sarah, but um, when I was thinking the emotion, I mean basically the opposite of being robotic.
The feel,
So
the
yeah,
feel, the connection,
the
the heart,
love,
the
the
heart piece. Yeah,
yeah, just the I mean empathy, compassion.
we could say the positive emotions versus the
We could,
negative emotions.
we could. Although,
Fr- Frustration, impatience,
can
anger,
like, am I going to get this? Am I ever going to get this? Does she ever?
anxiety.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Is it that simple to say negative, positive, and negative? I guess what I mean
It's
is,
not, but we could start there, right?
yeah, because let's imagine we have Optimus teaching our horses. So we put Optimus in the arena and we have already taught it to, you know, these are the things that guidepost one, can just do it. Well, it could present, you guys, I'm talking about the robots, the humanoid robots. Well, mark my words. Yes, mark my words. But it would know how to present it emotionlessly, consistently. It would know to let the horse collect data, repeat. It will be able to read the horse's body language, see when the horse is more relaxed, when it's tense, how many times do we have to repeat. Okay, so it's going to be able to replicate all that stuff better than we will. Hypothetically, just follow. I mean, in my view, this is for sure going to happen. But what it won't be able to do is have the soul element to it.
That'll take another 25 years.
You just want, I don't think so, right? Because it's not organic material. So, and we could say it wasn't created by God or whatever. That's just, it's going to be able to do things that better than we will, but it will not have that component. So I guess that gets to the heart of it just gives us a real world example of, like, are we being robotic and emotionless like an Optimus? No matter how perfect we are, that is technically going to be the mechanicking along, right? So what are we
I
talking?
mean, So I'm gonna argue the optimist thing. Like I get what you're saying, and the consistency and the gathering data and being able to perceive so many more things. But in terms of the presentation, can could a robot offer an energetic impulse? I mean, we've talked about hearts matching, you know, pulses regulating one another, kids being around horses, just grounding them, all of that. Like, where does all that come in? You get on a horse, and if you have the timing with the feet, which theoretically a robot could nail it, right? With through the scientific process, this worked, this didn't. But the timing with the feel feet, but then the feel through your whole entire body,
Being, yeah, our being.
yes, has an energy and a presence to it that's communicating when you can tap into that, when you're good at honing that and feeling of the horse and regulating that, the swelling of that presence or the invitation of that draw. That's something that, like, I don't know, could a machine do that? I don't think so. Right. And so,
No.
how much, right? So now you're on the horse. Like, I'm just imagining yesterday I was helping Julie S with, you know, when you pick up this rein, like, it has to, the whole horse has to turn loose. Okay. So Optimus could go, all right, it isn't turned loose, and this is what I do, and I get it to turn loose. But when it came down to it, is like, now that, well, first, offer it with just a feeling, offer it with an invitation. But if there's a brace somewhere, or if the foot isn't really coming with you, you're going to have to do more. Okay, Optimus can now firm up, right? And be like, no, I need that foot. But then can Optimus come back to where Julie was basically now setting the foot over, getting the flexion on a float with really not needing the rein, but now the whole horse is turned loose, right? So that's from the saddle, and you go, oh, could a robot do that? Probably not. But how much of that is critical to the communication from the ground, right? Sure, it could be very consistent in observing the horse, knowing when to release. Um, but then even the release, what's the release? Is already got no presence or emotion behind it, right?
Well, it depends on how sophisticated the robot is, obviously. I mean, because if it has muscles and tendons, and I mean, it could hypothetically, tense those and loosen those, and those would be things. But you're not arguing against what I'm saying, because I totally agree
Push
with you. That,
pushing back against
but I
the
agree with
yeah.
that part for sure, and that's my whole point. Is those are the things that it will not be able to recreate,
Hmm.
because it won't have true appreciation and love. It won't have the ability to connect with a horse and be in true unity with the horse on that soul level that we won't have that capability. It
And
will be.
how much, this is not really a question, it's a statement. How important is that? I mean, that is the,
We're gonna find out.
well, I'm just thinking, because someone that starts from that place and then learns the technical aspects, the scientific, this is the data you want to present, this is the data you're looking for, this is what you're wanting the horse to arrive at. If it's all starting with that appreciation component, that really seeing the individual and empathetically coming from their perspective, like, all of that is your starting spot, that's a lot. You're going to go further faster than someone who comes in is like just getting the horse to do it, and then you're trying to rate it way back to going like, hold on, like, cool, we want our horse to do things, we need him to not be running over us, we'd like him to yield when we ask him to yield, we'd like him to stay put and not walk off over there when I'm trying to stand here and talk to my friend, and now my legs are suddenly walking off underneath me. Okay, all of that. But is this horse just a tool underneath you that now is being held in position rather than enjoying being there because you're there?
For those of you guys that are listening, I'm nodding. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
So if that is the kind of kryptonite.
Well, but that's the question, right? That's often the question. And here's, before I forget, that I think that part of the discussion is because the scientific process and understanding the intellectual items and understanding the physical movements and the way they all fit together is one thing. Or is a component, like you can't get away from that, right? But then the other part is the part that an optimist, an perfect technician could not accomplish, could not offer. So often when we're talking about horsemanship, we talk about sometimes one or the other of those two things, yin and yang, and then sometimes we're talking about them together. Um, and the other thing I think that an optimist will not be able to have genuinely, and it'll be way easier to fake that with a person. You'd be able to trick a person into feeling like the robot loves you or is in awe of you. A horse, good luck, tricking an animal. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. They might value how clear you are. That's the thing. That's another question, is like, is a horse going to prefer you over optimist if you are emotionally fractious all the time? They might prefer, I don't know, we're going to find out. They might prefer the clarity and the relaxation that they can find, that a person isn't different I mean, I don't know. But you know what I mean? If a person is angry one day or just emotionally fragile,
So
they might just be like, hey, just give me the robot. But on the other hand, the other thing I was just going to say real quick is that we have awe for, ideally, we love horses. We look at the horse, again, Revlon has a dun stripe. I've never had a horse with a dun, so lowering the head, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have a stripe down your back. I can see if your body is wiggling or whatever. You have an actual stripe there. Wow, so cool. So the optimist is not going to care on that level.
so before reading Eva's comment, the consistency component and how compelling is that over, let's say, some relationship appreciation, what Eva's comment gets to that we'll read in a second here. You know, the personality of the horse, the core identity, I guess, of the horse. So now go watch horses in a herd, and there's some that are buddies and friends, and there's the lead horse maybe that's like, you just move when I tell you to move, and there's not a huge affinity here. There's not this like, oh, we're buddies and friends. The horse can, I'm sure, take comfort in and appreciate that leadership that says, you know your place, particularly if it's not a real domineering sense. It's just a, like, you just, this is where you belong. I'm not going to pick on you. And that horse can fully value that other horse without being afraid of it. But, you know, I don't know, I'm sure it respects its horseness, right? The lead horse respects the other one's horseness. But if there isn't a kind of, they're not buddies, what that horse is respecting is the consistency and the authority of that horse and the fairness of that horse, not necessarily some core relational element. I don't know. So maybe Optimus could be in there. That's it. We'll just put Optimus out there to keep the peace. It doesn't have to be any relational element, just like, you stop screwing around with that other horse, right? I'm in charge here. I don't even need a lieutenant because I emotionally could give a crap about you guys, but I'm in charge. It's the way to keep all the horses living in peace is to have an Optimus out in every pasture.
I'm telling you. Okay, let's read Eva's, shall we?
Yes.
Okay, Eva says, if there's a horse that has only been interacted with in training with a robot, how much will the horse be brimming with their personality and reach the highest point of confidence in themselves, since they won't have an actual relationship with the thing? And she's saying exactly the core identity. Keep Heidi from kicking the wall.
I I feel like many times, if Katniss was here, I wouldn't be dealing with this Heidi crap because when she was in with Heidi, Heidi was like a totally different horse.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Katniss was special. River has the same sort of ideas, but she is nothing like how perfect Katniss is. Yeah, so Eva, Katniss is the ruler, but she is a very benevolent ruler. She's deadly, knifey AF. About a horse that Michael and I kind of have shared, and now Betty owns. Um, anyway, she's great because she is very severe, but also when it's done, it's done.
But only in I mean, she doesn't look sideways in the least when you're in the picture.
And River's like
Not
that
like,
too. Hmm.
you're riding, she can have horses in and around. She doesn't. She's not in charge there. And I never, I didn't have to do any controlling of that or saying that's inappropriate. Thinking back on it, it was just if we're out in a group, I will take you out if you try to be in charge. And but once it's done, it's done. But none of that, even tied to the wall, she wouldn't. She never was like, "You get out of my space." It's like, "All right, we're tied here. Wall's in charge." Mm.
Absolutely. So here's my thing that, well, I'll just say what immediately comes to mind in regards to Eva's deal or Eva's comment about if there's if if Optimus has been the trainer and they've never had it, obviously a relationship, will they reach the highest point of confidence, and be that bright, engaged? And I don't think so. I mean, I would think not. But here's every single time we're talking about it, what my mind goes to is how toxic a relationship with a person can be. Sometimes angry and impatient, sometimes ooey gooey and lovey dovey and giving the horse so much latitude. That's the part that's toxic. For I would imagine from the horse is, and then we're just have to decide like, okay, how much does that horse come with like the golden retriever effect of like, I'm going to take care of the person, I'm here to kind of be the sponge, the balancer, the organizer of your emotions. I mean, I don't know, we're going to that's the question, right? And some horses are like, look, I cannot deal with your bullshit when you come to me angry about shit that's not even my fault. And then the next day you just are, it's like, I think if I was the horse, it depends on the person that would be like, "Hmm, give me the freaking robot who knows what it's doing, and I at least know what I'm supposed to do." Or how it's the constant washing machine of being so different. Now, I say that having had long-term relationships with horses that have put up with all of that from me. And maybe they are giving me and give us a ton of latitude because in our heart of hearts we are maybe good people or love them to the most. But yeah, tell me what you guys think about that. um but my gut instinct says no, they'll never, it would never be the same potential for brightness, for joy. I would imagine, it would just be calm and peace and the happiness that results from that. More like, I live with a stallion. If I do what he says, he's going to protect me. I can eat grass and live my life and be happy, but it's not the same as, watching two cats that are pair bonded, or I personally have two cats that are pair bonded. So it's very interesting to see the depth of that relationship. Um,
And then you think too, like, okay, we're talking a stallion or Katniss or like horses in a herd or training where the horse is learning the maneuvers, but then you also said peaceful, and peaceful would be the horse knowing their place, knowing whatever. But if you take that out to the robot helping the horse find peace, it is it, it would be wildly interesting to see or imagine oh, a robot doing the divorce or using the groundwork, taking the horse somewhere where the horse is beside itself because it's not with his buddies, and then this emotionless thing getting the horse through groundwork and releasing when the horse is turning loose and blah 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 blah. The horse going, okay, I can just stand here because essentially the horse is still alone, right? So now
that's a great
emotion
point.
emotionlessly, that horse has been trained, conditioned, encouraged through mechanical means, mechanical because it's a machine, right? But yeah, I don't know. It's still wild because how much of the
That's the
horse
question.
finding that quiet
Right.
is just i- is done with could be done without any sort of yeah, there you go. There you go. Right? Like
I
I
I
can imagine it getting you a ways, but
I
it would be a question of how critical is that component to
I think there's no
arriving at a spot where the horse is truly like, I could care less with if I'm with my friends. I'm out here essentially on my own with this robot thing that doesn't care about me, that isn't offering any feelings
Mhm.
or companionship. You know, I don't know, it'd just be kind of wild.
Well, we're gonna find out.
Well, we're gonna find out.
But I think you've probably hit the nail on the head the most,
We're
the
stuck.
best I've heard so far is the alone component. That the companionship, the twin souls, that is probably hitting the nail on the head. Not that the rest of the things that we've said are not super valuable, but that's a great point. That is a great point. I love that. Chelsea, would the robot be able to recognize if the horse is having an off day and decrease standards that day, or start at the standards where you last left off? But perhaps that's me being too emotional. Oh, they for sure are going to be able to recognize if the horse is having an off day. Oh, yeah, that's the thing about the robot at the level that I'm thinking of it. In 10 years or 5 years or whatever it's going to be, they will be the king of the scientific process because their CPU is going to be like, 1,000 times what ours is, right? So their ability to see micro
But
expressions, and
micro expressions, but yeah, I guess. I mean,
well,
how
they'll be
much are we reading the inside of the horse from the outside of the horse?
right.
Because they could read the micro expressions, but that's all the outside of the horse.
The horse is whole,
Yeah,
so the horse is not going to be divorced from their micro expressions.
yeah.
So if the robot, and it won't take long for it to collect the data and learn the horse.
Well, you're gonna have to have a robot around a lot of different horses, so it won't take long. But what this horse's expression is over against what that horse's expression is with what they're thinking, like there's a
I
lot of parsing through, working with a lot of horses, different body styles, different personalities. You
think
can't
about
just be like, here's a horse robot, and now like, oh, I got this shit figured out. you know?
yeah, but I think Chelsea's talking about an individual horse.
Yes, but I'm saying it won't. When you say it won't take long for a horse to put, or for a robot to put that all together, it's like, well, the robot's going to need a hell of a lot of data too. That you can't just,
One robot, one robot,
yeah.
and then you just download it into as many
Well,
robots
yes,
you need.
fair enough. All the other robots could then know it, but that one robot or its companion that has downloaded everything it knew, right? Each robot doesn't have to figure each part out anew, but the collective group of robots that are syncing and informing one another. So I guess that speeds it up if you have 60 robots working 60 different horses, but their CPUs are going to have to be comparing mental notes on what this expression. Yeah, it is kind of mind blowing what it
Well,
could do.
right, because if we're talking about just collecting data, because that's the thing that the robot will be able to do, without doubt or emotion, or like, it's just going to collect the data. That's it. And of course it will be able to perceive micro expressions and understand micro expressions more than we will ever be able to do. So then the other question is, how much intuition is there? One thing I would just say one more time, I'm not talking about the result being exactly the same. It cannot be, because the components are not the same. They do not have a soul. They will not, have the ability to truly be in awe, truly love. That this is impossible. So you're never going to end up with the same result. I'm just proposing that some horses might prefer, I don't know. I don't know. Um let's see. So Eva says they'll at least have confidence and consistency in knowing what's expected. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Is there will be an element of relaxation that the horse, depending on the person that the horse is saddled with. Haha.
Mhm.
But so
If
Eva,
that person is consistent, then they're like
yes.
the robot. If that person is inconsistent, the robot's probably better than them. If that person is consistent and has some sort of heart connection to this horse and awe of the horse and appreciation of the horse, and like Chelsea said, companionship and relationship that inspires effort, which I think is her going back and clarifying what is meant by, are they going to start at the same spot, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So it depends on the person whether the robot's going to be preferred.
Well, I think there's a total, and perhaps the horse too. You know, like you were saying. Um. Uh. What was I just gonna say? Oh, I was thinking of, people have said to me a few times recently, like, I would never let somebody touch my bridle horse, or, all that. In the end, just after enough experience, it's just so silly. I mean, that's just not my experience, because I hand my horses off to people all the time when they're hooked onto me, the person, when they're in a good place emotionally, when they're open minded and appreciative. And of course they appreciate, because they're like, oh, your horse is perfect, whatever. But which is not. But then when the person takes a hold, they might not at all be as consistent as even me versus Optimus, but they're so nice and kind to the people, and the horse seems quite interested. So long as the person's personality, or emotional affect has appreciation and care, the horse I'm just saying in that situation, that's the one that springs to mind right away, where the horse seems to care quite a bit more about.
The feeling.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So Eva says, in the end, then what on earth would be the point of us learning anything? It's a good question. Help me understand what specifically. You talking about us learning horsemanship or us learning anything in general? Is a question. Eva, you're the one who's gonna be in charge of all these things. She's 16, you guys.
17.
Yeah, help me understand. Elaborate, please, on what you mean. Because that is the question. And my immediate answer, after pondering this for quite a while, is it's going to be like music. This is my theory or hypothesis, right? Is like, how you could have the same notes played over and over again by different instruments and by the machine and by sung by a person, auto tune, no auto tune. But we all know very clearly that a person's soul is flowing through the music. Like, nobody's going to disagree with that. Everyone knows it, right? So there is something that is imparted physically in the world, or in a dimension that we can perceive. Eva, you're totally capable. I mean, I'm sure this is resonating with you. So there's no question that we, as an entity with a soul, and all the things that go with having a soul, are going to impart in the horsemanship and are going to add in a horse human relationship, in our relationship with the horse, and the results that we're going to get. um I would imagine Optimus is going to get a flying change way faster than a person who's never done it. You could put Optimus on and you could teach your tempies, and then and get your horse back, and then be like, okay, now we can do this in a bright, beautiful way with a soul, component. um I don't think there's any question that we're going to be adding a different component. And that will be to anything, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say, because we're never going to technique out a robot. We'll never be able to remember as much. Well, unless we have robot parts, if we have neural link, and who knows, maybe that's the dream. Like, that's the ultimate marriage between our soul and being able to use a robot that's a little bit different than the one we're using right now to talk to each other. Um, anyway, that's when I think about it. That's what I think about. Well, that's the thing that we have that they don't have. Zach, good morning, sir. You missed a good discussion about robots, buddy. Well, I'm curious, and especially I'm very curious. These kids. How old is Zach now? I don't know. Whatever.
15?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Um, so they don't know anything different than this technology technological interactivity. So sometimes I wonder, like, I wish we could download each other's perspectives, for those of us who grew up without the internet and without a cell phone and all that. I don't, it doesn't, this is what I would say, Michael, and you guys, it does not discourage me at all. It does not make me feel um less inspired. to learn horsemanship and to interact with my horses. I mean, because that's as silly as thinking, well, somebody else has more talent than me, or somebody else knows more than me, or somebody. That's like, who cares? Doesn't matter. I'm on my own journey, and I guess the bottom line is what I feel like I have to exchange for the horses to is love and appreciation. I guess, right? When you're taking care of Heidi, doctoring Heidi, and you are sacrificing for her. You are caring for her because she has value to you. Yeah, Zach says 50. Yeah, he got in late. Zach, dude, I'm serious. So Eva says, I guess I mean there wouldn't be a point for us discussing things, thinking through things. It's already known. Yeah, the only thing is, then we're going to have to rely on an absence of the soul filtering it. And I would imagine that's what the robot, even if it does at some point, have a true intelligence. We always say AI now, but some sort of autonomous intelligence. I would imagine it will always be aware that it doesn't have a soul, and aware that there are things that it would have if it did, that it doesn't, that it won't ever.
Can it understand it?
I would imagine it will be able to perceive that there's a difference.
Think it will be sad because of that?
Yeah, I would imagine that that will be able to perceive that there is something different in the way that we interact with the world. I'm sure we'll be able to hear, like if I sing something and Optimus, 4501 is singing, so it will be able to tell that it sounds different. I would think. I mean, who knows? We're
Well,
gonna.
I mean, we listen to recorded artists all the time that, auto tune or not, still speaks to us.
Mhm.
So hearing the difference, you know, I don't know. Again, you're feeling the difference. You're not hearing the difference.
I would imagine it's both, though, right? Although the feeling part, you ever listen to those old recordings of the groups that were in the age of Simon and Garfunkel, or who did the Eagles? Did you see that clip that was going around of the in year just, and it's just like makes your mouth water. It's recorded on old equipment, or Freddie Mercury singing way back then. It's like, dude, this is not the same.
Well, I will. Yeah. So even as I said that, right? Because you're saying the be able to perceive the difference or evaluate the difference between you singing and a recording of you singing is hard. And yet, going to a show over against listening to the album has a
Everyone,
totally different experience.
like, it's not like someone's like, well, I don't know, it's the same. No, it's obviously different. And but you don't necessarily have to value it, do you? I mean, you said evaluate, but I'm not necessarily saying, because you and I both love pop music that's auto-tuned to hell, right? But we both for sure could appreciate and love live music, or and
Sitting next to Tanya Tucker and hearing Delta Dawn live.
absolutely, no question. The sound waves coming off of her, the everything that makes her her. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And she also sounds incredible. But I can perceive that it's more than just her being perfectly in tune, you know. Yes. Yes. I had that experience, you guys, a couple months ago. Freaking awesome. Mhm. Let's see, Sarah. Another question is, will feel be able to be transcribed into code so the robot will understand it when they have trouble putting into words? Anyway, yeah, that's a good question. I
when
would say
we have
that's
when we have trouble putting it into words.
oh, sure. But I don't think no, because my opinion would be no, they'll never be able to understand it. Because it cannot be transmitted in words. They can come up with some general conclusion. I'm sure they can take everything that anyone has ever said or written about feel and come up with a general, probably a way better way to say it than maybe you or I would say it, except even here we're all interacting. Even we're just reading your text, you guys, because we kind of know each other and all that. So it's like, oh, there's an element that they'll never be able to perceive on that level, that intuition that comes via heart and soul. I mean, unless we're kidding ourselves about those things, but we're not. Obviously, we're not.
Oh.
So, like, for instance, when we sit in a forest without straw itch mites, let me tell you, that takes away quite a bit of the joy.
Or mosquitoes.
Yeah, or mosquitoes. At least with the mosquitoes, you for sure know what it is. Um, and can see them. And you have automatic feedback. But if we're in a forest and we get quiet, like you can feel the trees moving. You can there are things that just my supposing, I don't think that's going to be a thing. Eva, Corey says, Eva, hopefully we can still derive joy out of applying the knowledge and making connections that robots can't. Well, I mean, you guys, isn't that this is where we're getting to, right? Is the value is in the process. This is my whole point. I feel like I've been saying this for years is the whole point is the process, is the growth, is the moving us toward harmony in the universe. Us. The horse is in harmony with the universe. I guess you could disrupt that quite a bit by, for all sorts of different ways. But they're born that way. We're born to be that way. I suppose we could all agree on that. So the value for sure is in the process, which is why when we're not able to do XYZ yet with our horse, who cares? So long as we're safe, like what are we doing here other than the process? Otherwise, that includes emotion. Otherwise, we're just wishing to be a robot. And aren't we innately celebrating? This is, our culture in terms of the pursuit of horsemanship. Our culture is that mechanics in the absence of drawing out a horse's brightness and personality. And this is what I was talking about a few weeks ago, Michael, and emotional fitness in and of ourselves, moving ourselves more towards the center. That's part of the value. If the process is making us more fractious and more unwound, well, I don't know, I guess if you're just addicted to being in turmoil, but I don't think so because not in the way that we're thinking about it because that feeling is so important. And like you and I have talked about a million times, like who cares about the mechanics if you don't have that feeling with your horse? We would just do something else mechanical, personally. But I can't imagine choosing something else that's 100% mechanical either, right? That has
Mm.
no art to it, that has no soul to it, that has because then Eva, you'd be 100% right. What's the point? The robot will always win, and the robot will always be able to do it better. So, yeah, no, it's the soul part of it and all that goes with that. So, of course, let's not squash that part. But watching Revlon collect data and start to learn the scientific process or how that relates to me and her so that I can celebrate and appreciate what she's learning, what she's doing. Like, oh my gosh, you understood me. That's so cool. Thank you for offering that. You're so huge. Oh my gosh, you're so like, and appreciating her and valuing her. And then she gets this. That's her reward is the feeling of sharing joy, is sharing understanding, sharing appreciation. That's the other thing about a robot, is they're never going to understand. They will be able to collect unlimited amounts of data and process it way better than we will, but they'll never grok it. That's the funny thing about Elon naming, or whomever came up with it, naming that particular AI Grok, the large language model, the LLM. And it's like, because you guys look up the word grok, uh, a robot will never grok it. And that's what we're hunting. I would bet every time we're with our horse is a moment or two of kind of really grokking each other. Talk for a second, Michael. I'll look up the definition.
Yeah, I was gonna say you better find the definition of grok because that's not one I know the definition of.
It came out of a book in the 80s. So here it is. It's a verb. Third person. Let's see. Understanding something intuitively or by empathy. It's a 1960. It originated in the 1960s. A word invented by Robert Heinlein, an American author. The informal verb grok was an invention of the science fiction writer Robert A. Heinlein, whose 1961 novel Stranger in a Strange Land placed great importance on the concept of grokking. In the book, to grok is to empathize so deeply with others that you merge or blend with them. Okay, so there you go, Eva. That's the irony of naming the AI the LLM Grok. That would be the irony of it,
Mhm.
because they'll never be able to do that. We can though.
We're
So
better.
our hypothesis is that horses value that. I would imagine that's 100% true. We're gonna find out. Like I said, it would be very disappointing if that wasn't true. But our ability to grok things and to share on that level is our value. Period. Let's see. So Corey says, Eva, hopefully we can still derive joy out of applying the knowledge and making connections that robots can't. I bet so. I bet so. And Zach says, don't know if y'all have heard about the Kawasaki robot horse or not, but the thing is pretty strange. Yeah, that's the horse looking one, right? Or like it's some sort of a four-legged machine you ride, right? I think.
I don't know. I thought he was just talking about a dirt bike.
No, he says robot horse, the Kawasaki robot horse. Yeah.
No, you ride it. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a mhm. Yeah. But okay, so here's the thing, Zach. The same deal applies. Like that robot horse might be super cool and be able to go like, 70 miles an hour forever and ever. You don't have to take care of it or think about it for long periods of time, but it will never grok you back.
Doesn't care about you.
But I think it'd be way easier for a human to be tricked into thinking that the AI does care about them. It's not that hard to do.
If it's more sophisticated than a Kawasaki horse.
Uh-huh, yeah, but it will be impossible to trick an animal, I bet. A dog, a horse, I would bet. But it'll be like for gardening, maybe the plant is not going to appreciate the person back or the robot back, but the robot will be able to test their pH and get it just right. Moisture level. Like so this is gonna be the question. Like, is our ability to grok something and to share an experience going to offset our imperfection? The answer is obviously. Obviously. Otherwise, we would already be done with this. We all know that that is of value. The same way that we know, hey, is listening to a song on our iPhone the same as being in a concert hall with, a giant orchestra or being in an arena with 60,000 people, like listening to the Coldplay? No, of course not. Or sitting in a tiny room. Do you know if you could go back in time and the Eagles were playing for you in a, 200 person, like, little concert hall, like, no, of course. We don't have to argue this. We all know it. It's like, yes or no, guys. It's not the same. Duh. And this is Michael, think about it. This is what we've talked about for years too. And this is where Nathan would say all those. He goes, you're not even talking about the same thing. Because when a person is talking about all only mechanics, and like we've said, doing a perfect leg yield or a perfect canter depart or perfect run of flying changes across the diagonal, um, is that what we care about? Or is it that plus the feeling of joy and being friends and like, well, yes. So you could talk about one with just the mechanics, which is sort of rare, I would think, and the other one that encompasses all the other. They're actually two individual results, two separate results. Mhm. What else, you guys? Anything else? I think it's an interesting deal. Personally, this topic is very interesting. Not because we're really, I mean, who knows? Some of us are never going to even worry about having a robot with. I want the robot to do chores for me. And I probably wouldn't mind it bringing my horses in and out. In some ways, that's better than having a person that's fractious and impatient and miserable. I'll be excited for it to be able to do chores for me. And man, it would have known about the stretch mites way before I could figure out with the assistance of the AI. But I don't envision like needing to test it at all with my horses. I don't think. Maybe. We'll see.
Be able to test what with the horses?
Oh, just whether, all of this. Am I going to let my optimist train my horse to see if it's better, worse, or the same? Yeah, Sarah says we do it for pony endorphins. Yeah, and how much or is there a thing? This is another thing I would guess. I bet there's a certain type of emotion, certain type of endorphin that is shared, kind of like oxytocin, I guess, from a long hug or various other things that we share with a person, that you're not going to get without another person, another individual. So that's a shared, I believe. I guess we could test that too and see if that occurs in the those are things we can test If you have sex with a person, are you getting X amount of endorphins? If you have sex with, I mean, just like we can test stuff like that. We'll be able to test how it feels, to the horse in a way that we haven't been able to test before. That's another interesting thing, right? We'll be able to map the brain. Harder for the horse, harder to do the horse. Although I think all those heart rhythms, that's a great start. But for us to measure chemicals, anyway, so
It's interesting when you start talking about that, heart rhythms and all that, because how many times have I think we've said on the show, but we've definitely said like such and such a study shows that horses can you know
yeah, yeah. And we're like,
read human emotion or human facial expressions. Is like, why did we have a study on that? Like, of course.
why do we have
Duh.
ways?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but now we're gonna go mind mapping, brain mapping a
Well,
horse
that's I guess the
to
point. It's like
test whether the AI is doing the same thing for it as we are.
here's I guess to wrap it up, this is what occurs to me. Is that like we don't have to it's really a thought experiment to think about how perfect an optimist could get the mechanics. Okay? Because let's say with Revlon, I do want to teach her the mechanics as consistently and fairly and clearly as I can. As if it was as perfect as robot, I guess. You know? We could talk about that another time though. But what I want even more than that is for her to know that we're friends first, that she gets to move her own body, that there's an interesting process to trying to understand each other and a really cool feeling that comes when our minds and emotions and heart and soul all get together. That's what we're driving at when we're talking about this. It's just a thought experiment to examine each of those components. Because think about it. We think mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Well, robot can only do two. Oh, we have all four. That's 50% more. And that's, oh my gosh, that's the best part about horsemanship is it helps us be whole too. To be able to develop the intellectual and physical components while hopefully drawing out more emotional, more of the good emotions. Let's just say that, highlighting, accentuating more of the good emotions and allowing our soul to flow through without any blockage. Good luck, Optimus. That's what I have to say about that.
What I was just thinking.
So Sarah says that's why we call that high feeling of after riding or playing with your horse. Yeah, yeah, is the endorphins. But the question is it dopamine? Is it oxytocin? Like, what is it? More than just dopamine, for sure. Whole other discussion that, like you're pointing out, Michael, may or may not even be important. Also, be glad you guys don't have any straw itch mites around. And please wish me luck that I'm right about all of this and that I'm going to know in another day or two. Oh, please be right. Oh my God. I'm pretty sure I am, but I really, 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 really want it to be right.
So how do you know it's not going to be in the next lot of hay you get of that variety
I'm not going to get any more of that variety ever again.
this year?
Huh?
This year, I mean,
Huh?
is it all okay? So is it one supplier that is selling various types of hay off of his property, or is he brokering hay at all?
Brokering hay.
Okay, so you should be able to buy that type of hay in the future.
For sure. I'm just not going to. I am scarred. I'm sort of, I was on the fence about loving it anyway, so I could certainly take it or leave it. Um yeah, for me it's like no. But Adam said it could be any hay or grain that is infested with pests anyway. So it's avoiding one specific type of hay is not necessarily going to do it. But I personally
You're
will.
so illogical.
Yeah,
You are not robotic enough.
you know what sucks
Your
is
emotions have gotten involved.
I was thinking that I'm like I it is highlighting how emotionally tough I am. I mean, I wasn't gonna die. Although you think, I mean, I don't know, if you get into enough of them, maybe that would cause a pretty severe histamine reaction that would need to be dealt with. Like if you were rolling around in them or something, I don't know. But the amount of emotional distraction, or I was just writing about this yesterday, is like my one of my happy places is feeding my horses in the morning and at night and taking care of them. Like that is part of my relaxation. And so to have that jangled up with stress and concern and anxiety and actual harm, you know, is that sucked. And I was like, wow, things could be so much worse than this. And I am kind of a pansy a little bit. I mean, I wasn't being too much of a baby, but worse than I wished. I wished I could just block it out. That was very concerning. So you kind of have to think, well, is it super concerning because it absolutely needed to be dealt with, and my body was like, hey, you have to deal with this until it's done. Because we go on a hike, we get bit by mosquitoes or whatever, and you're like, that kind of sucks, but you're not going to die. But if you get into a wasp's nest, you can't just do that over and over again with no ill effects, right? That's going to build up over time. So I don't know. But mental toughness, I definitely thought about that. I was like, yeah, not horrible. I wouldn't give myself a D, but I give
But
myself a
not tough enough to try that hay again in the future. Emotion has
too high.
locked that off.
There's not enough of gain for that. It's like, eh. But I am willing to go down and clear out. Like I have another section to scrape out in front of the barn. All I wanted was a break so that I could get another data set. So I'm continuing. So yesterday was the first full day that I fed morning and night off of a completely separate supplier, not even the same property, completely different type of hay, different area that the hay was from. Put it on my truck, put the truck in a completely separate place on the property, and I am feeding only off of that. I am walking in and out of my barn, of course, but that's why yesterday not having any bites was really important. So I'm going to keep on that today for sure, tomorrow for sure. At the end of 72 hours of feeding only that hay, if I have no bites, I'm going to feel great about that. But wish me
And then
luck.
you're gonna go roll in the hayloft to make sure the hayloft is not still full of them.
Well, there's going to be an element of kind of having to do that. But the maddening part was not being able to start to narrow it down, because if I roll in the hayloft again, and it's like, okay, great. Then at least you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
At one point, Grok, or actually, I think I was using Gemini, because it's like I was trying to cross reference so I used Chat, Grok, and Gemini, and also regular Google search. But Gemini was like, you can use yourself as a petri dish, you can go test it. I'm like, are you out of your mind? This is exactly the problem with that. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. First of all, it's not even a clean data set. Like, you are not empathetic enough. Versus Grok's like, you probably don't want to do this, that, or the other thing. So what you could do in between programming. Anyway, wish me luck. I will be super duper disappointed if I have not, in fact, found the answer. That will suck hard. But we'll know in a couple days. All right. Anything else? You have
No,
good contact.
this was a wild conversation.
I know it's not your favorite, but
No, this is more. Yeah,
well, it's more applicable
yeah,
to,
it's more nuanced.
yeah. And I think because I want to video the and organize the guidepost one. I mean, and this is a lot, like in the framework. You have the qualities and theory and principles and the overall premise and all of that stuff. But there is a technical element.
Hmm.
And I guess the big thing, I'll just wrap back to a horse that just doesn't have any culture attached to her. It's just very apparent that layering on the overall premise, the overall principles, the overall framework of how she's going to operate is just very much highlighted that I am absolutely not just teaching her the mechanics.
Hmm.
So that's just really at the forefront. And kind
And
of
that gets you around having to spend so much time teaching the mechanics. Really, it shortens up because if you're as good as the robot and have that friends first component, or even quarter as good as the robot,
and you're
they
letting her body. That's the other thing.
yeah, and they just flow right into it, and that's the wonder of watching someone start a horse and get like Gary and get so much done, even if it's not a clean horse, just watching it all flow together as things just shape up because the horse wants to find that spot too.
Mm. Yeah, and that's another thing optimists will never be able to do is move the horse's body for them. You know what I mean? Like for the horse to have their blood pumping through their veins and their muscles and um what else, Sarah? Their fascia and blah, 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 all the all of that for them to orchestrate their own body. They're always going to be able to do a better job than we can do. So yes, you don't end up with having to undo things, which is very interesting to do also, of course. Like, let's just take Mowgli, where his entire culture was just bleh, you know, or there's a lot of it that is just problem. Jarl is a really good example. Like the whole framework was so messed up. So then going back, and then there takes so much convincing too at times, depending on the horse, versus Revlon, who she's very apt to be like, sure, but you have to at least be aware of what you're trying to to teach. Even with flour, oh my gosh, she is so wild. It's a funny process. I don't know. I still haven't really touched her. Like I said, I could definitely move her around a little bit more. But there's a whole bunch of culture things that I'm putting into her too. And yeah, anyway, it just really highlights the absolute starkness of the fact that it's not just the mechanics. Mhm. All right, you guys, shall we go for today?
Off to work we go.
hmm Off to work we go. It's going to be another beautiful day here. Although it rained yesterday, so quite humid. Kind of like at your house, 80 degrees and raining. It's like, oh my.
Yeah, it dropped precipitously. It's quite warm on Monday, Tuesday. I don't know. I think Tuesday was warm. Yesterday, the cold moved in. It felt like fall. Leaves started falling. threw a sweater on. So and I think today is supposed to be cool too. So hopefully not the end of
I know.
some warm weather, but I certainly appreciate it not being hot enough that I'm like, oh, do I need the ice vest? Do I not?
Yeah, it
Oh,
have the edge off of it. And of course the bugs here. I mean, not just the straw edge mites, but all the fly, you have two types of flies when it's low of 50, high of 80 versus five types of flies when it's high of 100, so much. That's something I'm appreciating right now too. Yeah. Good. Well, hopefully we have all through October too. You could have all through October, right? Yep. So
yep.
we're all dreaming of all through October, all through September, but it's definitely time for gravel and to put up the firewood and all that for sure. So, yeah, we hope you guys have a good week. Feel free to share the show. Hopefully, that's pretty easy to do. And Michael, I've been pretty good about getting these up on Spotify within a few days. So
Nice.
that's pretty cool. Yay me. Hopefully, I can keep up with that.
Me.
It's way easier with YouTube because I don't
Oh,
have to.
yeah? That's
Yeah,
good.
the file is just upload ready versus I was having to do some gymnastics to get the file from Facebook ready to upload to. I had to go through, process it in a different way. So this one is just download, upload. So that's great. And yeah, so Michael and I are here every Thursday morning at 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
8:30 Central.
See you guys next week. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.